Hey, everybody, welcome to the Speakeasy. I'm Jeff Belanger, your barkeeper tonight, as always. And this hasn't been the most fantastic week ever. Since I talked to you guys last, the whole nation's been pretty much at unrest. And I know you don't come here for political discussions. We won't really get too far into politics, I promise. But I'm upset, I think, like a lot of Americans, and confused and don't know what to do and want to help and hate to see the injustice and all that kind of stuff. And then I thought about this. I'm a paranormal guy. I know ghosts and ghost stories. And I know that sometimes things haunt us if we don't deal with it. And if you still don't deal with it, those ghosts will turn into demons, whether you believe in them or not. They will turn into something that might get way out of control. And so maybe what's happening is that our ghosts are speaking up, ghosts from our past, and it's time we sort of deal with some things that have been a problem for a long, long time. That's my hope. My hope is that maybe we can rewire our minds just a little bit, because who knows what great things we might discover when we do that. So I do love exploring these topics because we're asking really big questions, like, is the paranormal out there, or is it a little more in here? Maybe it's a combination of both. And so tonight I'm going to catch up with an old friend. He's the author of a bunch of books on ESP and the paranormal. He's got a master's degree in parapsychology, which is just one master's degree more than I have. And he's an adjunct professor at JFK University, the president of the Forever Family Foundation, sits on the board of directors of the Rhine Research Center, which is really cool. And he loves chocolate. And if that ain't reason enough, then I don't know what else is. So please welcome my old buddy, Loyd Auerbach.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
You know, Loyd, funny you ask. It's been a weird 2020.
Yeah,
you know?
it's this year has been weird in so many different ways. Yeah.
How are you doing? What are you drinking tonight, by the way?
I am drinking cold brew coffee with a little bit of blackstrap rum in it.
Oh, look at you, because I just have hot chocolate. Like regular, but it's good. Like I use the mix and then I add in the extra cocoa powder, and so it's like,
so, when I make hot chocolate, I'm actually getting cocoa nibs and grinding them up and letting them sit, just kind of making almost like a cacao tea.
Which is funny because Shiloh just asked great credentials. And so here, let me tell you guys something about Loyd Auerbach. If there's ever a paranormal conference again where we can actually gather physically, you want to hang near this guy, because there's like a 97% chance that he's got like chocolate on him, and not like
probably more like 100% chance that I'll have chocolate with me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I saw the question, and I can say that my favorite chocolate right now is Manoa chocolate from the island of Oahu. They make, to me, the best chocolate, and they do ship anywhere in the country as long as it's not above 90 degrees. They ship in a cooler pack, beautiful cooler pack. One of the best places I've ever gotten chocolate from.
So stand near Loyd, because he'll offer you some. He's a nice guy that way. So we've known each other a long time. We've gotten to talk about all kinds of things. I just want to start with, you're in California, Northern California, right?
Right, outside of San Francisco.
Let's start with like the first catastrophe with the pandemic. How has that affected you since this all went down?
Well, I have a day job.
That's good.
That I've been mainly home based for that. I work for an online company called LexisNexis, which gives me access to enormous news banks of information through a couple of our products, like huge amounts of it, more new than I could actually consume. News and science papers. And I was home based anyway. I did some traveling, and that's got cut out. But the teaching I've been doing for the Rhine Center and other places has been online. So even my courses this year for JFK were online even before the pandemic hit, and for Atlantic University. And I'm just home.
Yeah.
Right now.
God, remember doing stuff? Remember that?
Yeah. I think I went to we just had a new half-price books open up nearby.
Yeah.
And I went there about a week before all this happened. I was looking forward to going back every so often, and I'm just going to have to wait.
So we've got so many Americans out of work, millions and millions, and home and already angry. And then we've got this horrible event that happened in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And so, it's like a tinderbox, and now we're shooting flames in it. And suddenly the whole nation is just we're at our end, right? I mean,
It's insane. We have kind of a civil war going on, but it's not just two sides. I mean, the fact is that here in the Bay Area over the weekend, for example, there were several shopping centers that were hit, nowhere near the protests. They were just plain old looters. So when it really comes down to it, it's not protesters and police. It's protesters, looters, and police. And unfortunately, the looters mix with some of the crowds to create problems. And that's creating problems in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, where I live right halfway between like Boston and Providence, Massachusetts, Providence, Rhode Island. And I got to tell you, it's crazy. Like there's curfews in Rhode Island. Like there's never.
Yeah, we have a curfew here now too.
It's just stuff you've never seen, and this year just gets weirder and weirder. And it's weird that two guys like us are talking about weird, because like we made a whole living for years and years before this.
I know.
And when we say it's weird, like run, right? This is
give me the most haunted place in the country anytime over what's actually happening otherwise. And it's only it may get better, but at the same time, once the election starts coming up, it's going to start getting weird again.
Yeah.
No matter what happens. And the real problem, I think, is that with all these crowds gathering, I think we're going to see a spike in COVID-19 again. So they've been lightening up here in California, but I have a feeling it's going to shut back down, not because of curfews, but because people are getting sick again.
Yeah, it's I'll tell you. So I don't want to go on too much about this. Yeah. I don't want to bring people down, but I do want to check in. It's important. I think talking about all this stuff is important, that we at least have the discussions and try to figure out what we don't know and try to see things from everybody's side. It's the only way we're going to find some middle ground here. And what I said in the beginning, I mean it. I really feel like sometimes a haunting is like a lesson we haven't learned, right? Like unsolved murder, that's easy, right? It's just, someone died here, was murdered here, and it's haunted now because we don't know who did it. Their spirit cries out for justice, whatever, line you want to use.
And of course, for us in my field, we separate hauntings from apparitions or ghost cases because they are two different things.
Yes.
And they can look the same to start with, but they are two very different things for us.
So let's talk parapsychology, because you are different than like the ghost hunters out there that I think a lot of people know on TV and stuff like that. Can you just sort of define, like, where does parapsychology start and ghost hunting stop, and that line?
Well, the history of the field of parapsychology, which includes psychical research, we go back officially to 1882 and the start of the Society for Psychical Research, which is still very active in the UK, extremely active, in fact, and a great organization to join. And the early researchers were scientists from all fields who got interested in spiritualism because of all the rage of spirit mediums and such, but also had committees that were looking at extrasensory perception, which was not even called that at that time. They were looking at telepathy and clairvoyance. They were looking at precognition. They were looking at hypnosis, actually was one of their committees too. But they did a lot of the initial field investigations, not just of mediums, but also of apparitions and hauntings and poltergeists and things like that. So in reality, even though people consider, think of the word parapsychology referring to laboratory research, it's really field investigation, field research. Ghost hunting comes from us. Mm-hmm. It comes from psychical research. People seem to think it's a new thing, but there's even a book from, I think it's the very late 1800s, early 1900s, called Ghost Hunters, Historic Ghost Hunting and Ghost Hunters. Yeah. So
Harry Price, right? Harry Price, 1922, I think, was Confessions of a Ghost Hunter.
That's right. In the early 20s, and even later, he made the term ghost hunter very popular, and then Hans Holzer made it popular again.
Sure.
So it's the difference is that we try to follow some scientific methodology, which is not always easy outside the laboratory because you can't put controls on the situation. It's social science. I mean, it's not physical science, it's social science, kind of like anthropology in a lot of respects. But we can apply what we learn in the laboratory research and from field investigation and research we can apply that science to our investigations. So that's one major difference. And all of what we study outside the lab does involve psychic phenomena. It is all psychic phenomena. There seems to be a disconnect for ghost hunters thinking that we don't need to know about ESP or psychokinesis. That's actually absolutely not true, because that's what's happening.
Right. Yeah, right. Something, right, beyond the norm. Now, the Rhine Center, I mean, this used to be part of Duke University, and I think when people who studied a little bit more than just watch the TV shows, know anything about parapsychology, you think of the Rhine Center, and which has since spun off from Duke, right? It's not affiliated directly anymore, or
Yes,
how's that work?
yeah, it's not affiliated. J.B. Rhine, the lab was founded in the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
He retired in 1965, and when he retired, the lab was taken off campus. It became the Foundation for Research in the Nature of Man and the Institute for Parapsychology, and then renamed in the 80s after him, the Rhine Research Center. So essentially, even though it's next to Duke, like a stone's throw, it is not affiliated, even though some of the people on the board have a connection to Duke University. But it's been there since the early 30s.
And you're on the board. And what are they up to today? Like, I feel like I don't hear from them, and a big part of that's my fault. I need to, pay attention.
You should be a member, Jeff.
I should be a member. I would never be a member of a club that would have me as one of its members, Loyd.
Well, that's true. That is true.
Groucho, yeah. But no, so what are they doing now? What's basically the day-to-day like at the Rhine?
Well, right now, nothing, because it's not open. It's closed. But John Kruth is the executive director, and a couple of the others are very active. We have the Rhine Education Center, which offers courses, online courses. Been doing that for a few years. I'm one of the two main instructors. We have some other folks as well. I'm teaching, actually, my third class starts tonight on paranormal tech for 4 weeks.
Wow.
So we do courses, everything from, research methods to this right now I'm teaching Monday nights an intro to parapsychology, Tuesday nights evidence for life after death, basically human consciousness and survival. And tonight it's a course looking at the equipment being used in ghost hunting by people from the perspective of parapsychology and the evidence for that. And then John Kruth is teaching other courses. So that's a big piece.
And you've been teaching courses for as long as I've known you, which is...
I have been teaching courses in parapsychology since 1982.
Yeah, that's longer than I've known you.
Many of which are graduate level courses. Our online courses are semi-academic. Right. People can take it for grade or not, but I've been teaching courses at different places for over the years. Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah, very cool. So Bruce here has a good question. There's a lot of tense emotions right now. People are stuck at home for months where they weren't before without distraction. Are you seeing an increase of reports of cases of people that are just like, hey, I've lived in this house 10 years. There's never been a problem until like 2 months ago. Now that I'm spending all this time here.
Well, one of the benefits of having access to all this news information is I can see articles from all over the place. And there seems to be an upswing. Also talking to a couple of colleagues, there's an upswing in people noticing things that they did not notice before about their homes. Much of which, honestly, is not paranormal. Much of which is just simply about them focusing their attention on things like house settling noises, the stuff that we would eliminate when we're doing investigations.
Right.
But the reality is that it's likely that if they had something going on in their house previously that they ignored for whatever reason, now that they again are focused or limited, too much time in the house, they probably are noticing those things. So I would not be surprised if there has been an upswing. I haven't gotten any additional cases, but most of the folks in my field don't get cases because, frankly, the ghost hunting groups tend to make wilder claims and therefore get all the attention.
Yeah, there's that. And I know there's always questions, right? So there's so many ghost hunting groups out there, and some of them are getting into interesting places and doing interesting things. But like, and this is a question, I know a friend of yours, you referred him my way recently. Yeah. And it's funny. I told him, I said, hey, look, I don't mean to sound like jaded, but I've had this conversation like 4 or 5 times in the last 20 years, like it's a good idea. How do we get people collecting data? And the analogy we've used in the past is like the field of astronomy, right? Where they're professional astronomers, and then there's amateurs that make huge contributions that are watching the skies in Wyoming and Australia, and they get comets named after them and all kinds of great stuff. How do we collect data, and what data could we collect? I mean,
there's thousands of ghost hunting groups. That, and I know that. The difference between ghost hunters or paranormal investigators from these groups and amateur astronomers is that amateur astronomers actually study astronomy. Right. They take the time and they study the science. They study the fields. So when they make a contribution, it's because it's based on what they have actually learned, where unfortunately the majority of ghost hunters, what they learn is from watching television. Right. Or from people who watch TV and then go out and pretend to teach something that they know. So it's unfortunately the blind leading the blind. And I say that since we don't actually investigate in the dark. So they really are in the dark. Right. A lot of stuff. They're actually missing. The problem here is that they're missing so much. There's so much cool stuff that we have learned in and around apparitions and hauntings and poltergeists that most ghost hunters don't bother to even look at or learn, because they've been told by some of these TV shows that science is irrelevant or the scientists are irrelevant.
Right. And then here we are. I was working on a case once in Rhode Island that it was interesting. I mean, they taught the stuff they claimed, like, dinner plates flying off the wall and shattering against the wall and all this other stuff. And the young children described two moms, right? There's good mommy and bad mommy. And bad mommy was the scary ghost. And so I'm like, now here's the good news is my sister is a PhD in psychology, right? And she deals with developmental psychology. And so I called her. I'm like, Sue, can you come with me on this one? Like, just let's go interview the family around the table. And we did. And we got there. And I said, she asked lots of good questions about just trying to make sure, are you really with us and stuff? And the couple, I'll say that they came from the two most broken, rough childhoods you could imagine in foreign countries. I mean, gang warfare, rape and violence, like all the things that kids should never be a part of. And so the couple we were talking, and then the couple started to get just a tiny bit heated with each other, just a little bit of an argument. And Loyd, man, the whole room went electric, right? Mm-hmm. And they were, I mean, on a 1 out of 10, they were maybe at a 2. And you could tell like they had plenty of room to go. And they were just, no, it wasn't. It was over there. No, it was over there. And I've never felt anything like that. I mean, I've been in the room with people arguing, my parents, right? But these two, it's just electrified. And I'm thinking, this is you. It's not the house, right? And the house wasn't that old. There was nothing really much there, but this is you. And what do you do at that point? Do you get them in a lab?
No, you don't have to get them in a lab, but you're absolutely right. I mean, that's one of the things that we find. What we call poltergeist cases are coming from living people most of the time. Right. And I've actually had seen things move because a couple was arguing, and they didn't even see it because they were paying more attention to the argument than they were actually to what was going on around them. So it's whatever the motive force is, and we have some ideas about what's actually going on, not a lot. There are stresses that bring things up out of our unconscious. And so the question is, do we take them to the lab? The question there, really more important question is, what do we want to have happen? Do we want the phenomenon to stop, or do we want to play around with it a little bit more?
No, I want to see it, man. That's it.
We want, and there's some ethical issues there.
I wanted to like poke the wife and be like, oh, he's getting you good. Come on, get him back.
I mean, there are questionable ethics on causing stuff to happen. It'd be different. One of the things that I would often do, that I have done, is when people apparently could move things unconsciously. Well, let's see if we can get them to do it consciously. And that actually worked in a few instances. But what the interesting thing is, by working with them to try to move things consciously, the other stuff stopped. Right. But in the case of this couple, they needed counseling. That's what they need. That's the only thing that will actually resolve the issues there, or conflict management. They probably need or a referee, maybe.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or a counselor. But I mean, at the same time, don't you think that even the TV shows and definitely all the groups, they're contributing to, I mean, a more open discussion of something that
I think, yes, I think that the one thing that has happened because of the TV shows and all the people following TV shows is that people have come out of the woodwork and been able to admit that they're interested in the subject. There's no question about that. Yeah. That's been a real positive. And there have been people coming into the field or taking things seriously. A small percentage, unfortunately, it's a small percentage, but there have been people who have actually gone on and really made contributions to the field. But, and I know that we have encountered so many people over the years who say they're making a TV show or a pilot. Now they can get up on Amazon Prime no matter what they do. So they really can be doing that. But it seemed to be more about fame than it is about actually learning what's going on.
Yeah, no, I get it. And at the same time, too, I think for some people, it's a social club, which, by the way, is okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. If you, I mean, it's, as long as you're not trying to fool anybody, then it's like, hey.
I have never had a problem with any group that says we're in it as a social club. We want to learn whatever we can. We're doing it as a hobby. But as soon as they start calling themselves professional and start claiming to be scientific with no science background, then we get into some troubled waters.
Sure. Yeah. And if, like anything, there's good groups and there's not so good groups. So Elise has a great question. So this couple, once they're made aware that, hey, when you fight and you argue, this is when stuff is manifesting, does it help? I mean, does it?
It definitely helps. There are different ways to cause poltergeist phenomena to stop. One way, counseling, or at least the information process, makes a big difference. especially if you can get the people to accept that it is them. That seems to kind of quell the activity quite a bit. The other thing which we've done over the years is a lot of these people don't seem to have any other outlet for those stresses, no physical outlet. So they don't tend to be the jocks, the athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So, bowling works really well because you can bowling works great. You can release stress and tension. Tai Chi, martial arts, is a great way to channel or funnel your energy. So there's different approaches depending on the group.
Hold on, wait. Who discovered bowling? Like, I'm a fan. Don't get me wrong. Like,
I was working with some folks years ago. I don't know if it was my thought to begin with. I might have even heard it from somebody else. But the idea is that if it's pent up emotion and pent up stress, let's face it, when we're stressed out, the average person, we want to break stuff, right?
Yeah.
So bowling allows you to kind of do that.
Not the way I do it, Loyd.
Well, right before the pandemic hit, we saw an ad for a place nearby. It's a place where you can go and break stuff.
Oh, I've seen that. That's a thing that they're all over. Yeah.
So that would be a great way to get rid of your stress and tension. That would actually alleviate the whole poltergeist thing.
I don't mean to brag, Loyd. One time I bowled a perfect game, all zeros, like straight.
I don't think I ever did that. But I haven't been bowling in a long time.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, what else can you do? Like, I mean, beer is a part of the requirement. Beer and shoes, and
Well, not if you're a kid, but yeah.
Right.
At that point, it was vanilla Cokes and French fries.
Okay, fine. Shiloh wants to know, and of course, you're going to plug your own books here. Go for it. What are some of the books? Like, how can we be better? How can people that are saying, like, yeah, all right, I want to do better. What are some books you recommend besides Esp Hauntings and Poltergeist, which is over on that shelf somewhere?
Yeah, I would certainly recommend that book of mine. I strongly recommend books that there's a couple books that actually look at the phenomena itself. Mm-hmm. That at apparitions and hauntings, anything. There's a great book by Tony Cornell called Investigating the Paranormal. And Tony was one of the longtime researchers for the SPR in England. So that book's about 50 years of his investigations and how he approached them. Really excellent book to start with there. But there are other books that are about parapsychology in general that include field investigation or field work. It really depends on the level of interest or reading level you want to get to. I can tell you there are free books. I would start with the early stuff. In fact, if you want to learn about the early stuff, there's a book called The Ghost Hunters by Deborah Blum. Mm-hmm. It was a New York Times bestseller back around 2007, 2008. It is available in a lot of formats. Read about the early folks to start with and how they approach their investigations scientifically and otherwise. And then if you go to the Internet Archive, which is archive.org, and you search for the phrase psychical research, you'll come up with all sorts of really early investigations, setting the stage for doing more scientific investigations. So,
one of the books I've always recommended too is Harry Price, Confessions of a Ghost Hunter, and that's on archive. It's free. It's public domain, and so you read that. And what's amazing to me, and keep in mind that book is almost 100 years old. It's just shy, a couple years shy of a century. And, people go in with EMF meters into investigations and they repeat the things they've seen said on television. And if you read that book from 100 years ago, I mean, basically a psychic said, yes, electricity, this newfound invention, this explains psychic phenomena. So Price was saying, well, let me use a galvanometer. Let me look for electric charges. And we've really not advanced a whole lot in 100 years. The equipment's cooler. It flashes lights and stuff.
Well, and I think it flashes lights a lot because the TV producers have been asking for that since the early 80s.
Well, yeah.
Ghostbusters.
Wait, I got it somewhere. Listen.
Yeah, I will tell you, one person there you go, yeah.
There's a ghost on my computer right now because it's lighting up.
K2 meter, yeah.
Yeah. It's not a K2 meter, it's a ghost detector, Loyd. God, you don't know your stuff at all.
Yeah, I guess my students tonight will learn nothing from me.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
I rattled you. You're like, ugh.
I wasn't sure which direction to go in with that. Another author to look for, by the way, is D. Scott Rogo. Some of his books are being reprinted, and Rogo was meticulous field investigator and field research. William Roll's book, The Poltergeist, is in print. That's also a great one to start with. There's a good bibliography in my books. Esp Hauntings and Poltergeist has a really good bibliography of things. But really comes down to the tech. We have environmental sensing tech. There is nothing that can detect a ghost because we don't know what they're made of.
Right.
we have to infer by what's going on in the environment. So
there was a case that I worked on, and it was your referral, this is so great, years ago.
I know which one you're about to say.
Yeah, I know. So the subject from Loyd Auerbach in my email was just, "You owe me." And so there was a woman in Quincy, Massachusetts, not too far from me. Lloyd's in California. I'm here. It makes sense. She ran a pole dancing studio and said it's haunted. And she would dance, and there would be these wispy things floating around and whatever. And he's like, "You want to go investigate?" And I'm like, "Loyd, I'm on this. Like, I got this." Like, it's so my next door neighbor, not a paranormal investigator, but works for a company that he's literally an engineer that makes devices to measure everything in an environment. So, for example, you put on top of a smokestack to know how much particulates and everything that's coming out. He's got devices that measure humidity in a room, static, dust, everything. So he borrowed like 50 grand worth of gear from his office for the weekend, and we take it up there, and we got this place all wired up. And she would dance in this small room, and the music is loud and it's thumping. You can see the mirrors kind of boom, boom, right? And she would put the video camera right in the doorway. And so she starts dancing. And well, that's the funny part. We're like, well, I guess this happens while you dance. You should probably dance. So there we all are. I mean, being scientifical. Yeah. And she starts dancing, and we rest our hand on the door frame just to rest, and some dust comes down, and it goes real close to the lens, and her spinning around gets it. Yep. And we were like, huh. And my neighbor's like, do we tell her now? I'm like, no, not now. We gotta see this through. We gotta be thorough. I mean, maybe that's just one thing. But then you find sometimes people are attached to the idea of the ghost.
Yes.
Of almost companionship. And yes. I've seen that not, in other cases too, where people are like, no, that's, they feel an affection for it. They don't feel threatened or anything, but this is my buddy. I don't want it gone. And at that point, I'm not sure what to do. Right. And what do I know anyway? I can't say that it's there or not there. I don't consider myself psychic. I just know what I see and experience. And that's an interesting part of it too, when you should be almost more psychologist than parapsychologist, right?
Yeah. You have to, you really have to look into what's going on, what the need is for people. I've had plenty of cases over the years where people have said that we want to offer you to come in to our house because we think we have a ghost. We're positive we have a ghost, and to see what you find. They don't want it gone because they have a relationship with this deceased person. Yeah. So that becomes a really interesting opportunity to sit down and not worry about the people getting afraid or calming them down or anything like that. You have a much better interaction with the living people and potentially with the dead as well, if you can bring in a psychic or medium to that circumstance. So, of course, in those cases, in any one of my cases, even the best of cases has some phenomena, or what they call phenomena, that is explainable. Sure. And we have to explain it. So, it gets down to that woman basically feeling the ghost is there, but this is not evidence of him.
Right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, there could be other things, but that in particular was not. And now you work with plenty of mediums, right? Like I
do. I've been working with psychics and mediums since I got into the field, but for the last several years, I've worked with a couple of people in investigations, and then I've also worked with mediums in other contexts because the Forever Family Foundation supports the work of mediums in the family grieving process and also scientific research in life after death. So I know a lot of really excellent mediums, and I've been lucky enough to work with some great ones in investigations as well.
So how do you reconcile the academic Loyd gear, let's explain everything we can, and the psychic medium and their impressions?
Well, first, the person I used to work with the most until she passed away in 2011 was Annette Martin. Yeah. We co-wrote a book called The Ghost Detective's Guide to Haunted San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And when we did investigations, Annette was my main tool, you might say. In fact, we would do TV interviews and somebody would say, Loyd, what's your favorite piece of equipment? And Annette, being pretty much she was an opera singer for years. So she would jump in front of me and say, I am.
Right.
So, and that was true. The reality is that human beings define the phenomena. So in other words, we would not have ghosts or hauntings or anything without a human being to start with. Right. And when I see TV shows where they dismiss the witnesses completely because it's anecdotal evidence, then I have to wonder, what are they actually investigating? Because the story is a bit of anecdotal evidence.
Right.
So we have to really start with that. So a psychic or medium who's a good one is just another piece of detection equipment, sensor equipment, that adds to what the witnesses have actually said and can either confirm, bring up additional information. And what I've learned over the years is the kind of personality for a medium or psychic that makes the most sense, but it boils down to this. No piece of equipment, tech or person, is useful unless they provide useful information that connects to the story, to the actually witness testimony.
Right.
None of it's useful. So that's the most important thing. And that's a scientific approach, actually. You can do a lot with psychics and mediums to test them in the field or to get information from the place.
Yeah. No, but the other part too is that I've always said, like, any ghost show you've ever seen ever, it started because someone chased a story. Right. That's if they're being really scientific, they'll be like, here's the McDonald's that was built off the highway 6 months ago. We're going to investigate it. Why?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
What's happened there? Nothing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's not interesting.
And, there have been so many cases that I've seen, and I've talked to people at some of these places that have been done on TV, where the investigators come in and they dismiss the actual witnesses and find somebody who can tell the story, who doesn't actually know the story or has been informed of the story, who has no experience with the situation. And they say that's unbiased. But actually, that's more biased, because whatever that one person was informed about may not be the actual experience. It may be some folklore or some other things. So you're getting possibly the wrong story from that.
There's a TV show, not going to name any names, it doesn't matter anyway, did a location in northern Rhode Island, and went on and on about this ghost of a little boy. Now, I know a bunch of people that have worked in that building for many, many years and claim it's haunted up and down, all kinds of accounts. The little boy was brand new that night on the show. Like, that's the first time they've reported all kinds of other things, but not the boy. And so ever since then, people come in and they see the boy. That boy, since the TV show aired, which was the very first time any mention of that, now the boy's there. And how do you explain that? Is this just projection, or, Well,
that suggestion is what it is. Tony Cornell told me a story years ago about they did an investigation in the 1960s in a haunted pub, and a lot of people had experiences there. He actually was one of the first people to do a concerted effort of electronic gear in a case. They actually built something that had all the environmental stuff in one case and had a chart recorder and the whole thing. So they did their investigation, talked to everybody, didn't quite find anything that would support the actual story. And Tony said that they were sitting around with a lot of the patrons of the pub at night, drinking ale, and somebody suggested that they come up with a better ghost story. So they, on the spot, Tony and everybody else came up with a ghost story, which is what the people believe is the actual ghost to this day. So people can actually add to folklore, can change things.
Sure.
Which is why you really need to find firsthand witnesses and really get in there. Sylvia Brown was constantly, when she did her stuff, if the family saw a male ghost, it was a female. She always disagreed with them.
Right.
Because clearly the people who had the experience didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah, I guess she had to do something, right? I mean, I've seen that too. There's also the idea of a tulpa, right? The thought form.
There is that idea too.
That you create something.
We're not really sure what to make of that. There was the Philip experiment that was done in the 70s, where a group of people, it was group psychokinesis, group mind over matter, in the guise of, and it was for a very good psychological reason, the guise of a ghost they made up. Mm-hmm. But that ghost never took on any life, never really did anything outside the context of their sitter group at all. But the Tibetans believe in the tulpa, which is the thought form.
Yep.
I actually met a woman who was a channeler who claimed to be channeling Athena.
Okay.
And when I asked her, "Are you Athena, the Greek goddess?" the response was really kind of cool. She said, "There never was a Greek goddess named Athena. I am the belief of the ancient Greeks in a representation of wisdom."
Wow.
That was I didn't know what to make of that. But
right.
Exactly. That's exactly how I felt. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's the kind of idea of a thought form, but that was a really interesting response, especially somebody who was a channeler.
Yeah.
Amongst, and it was actually on a TV show amongst a number of other channelers who were channeling their own entities, and, not giving ID for those entities or anything like that.
So Jenny wants to know about the Brookdale Lodge. I know I've looked into that place for ghost adventures. I might be closed now. I don't know.
Yeah, I believe, I don't know. I think they were reopening part of the Brookdale Lodge. They hadn't opened the restaurant yet. I have friends who live down in that general area. There have been a couple of different owners. Unfortunately, I don't know what its future looks like right now, especially given the circumstances. But I was in the Brookdale Lodge in the 90s after it was a retired police officer and his daughters took it over. And they had written the place up. It had been just investigated by a reporter who talked to them. And they had talked to previous people who knew the place and had said it was haunted by possibly a number of spirits. There was some activity in the ballroom with a little girl and also a woman who was being seen. So by the time I got there, which was a couple of years after they opened, the guy's daughter, who was one of the bartenders, and also the bartender himself, had experience with a little girl, had seen people like disappear into the restroom that just never came back out.
Right.
But they seem to be very interactive. The more common thing that was reported by guests who stayed in the place was when the big restaurant, which is where the brook ran through, was a place called the Brook Room. And
yeah, so just real quick. So like there was a brook that ran through the dining room and a tree and everything. And Brookdale's in Brookdale, California, right? That's the...
Yeah, Felton, California. It's the Santa Cruz Mountains, yeah.
Yep.
And in fact, the Brook Room is huge. It's got this one brook going down the center, and a child actually slipped and fell into the brook and hit her head and died. That was back, I think, in the 1940s, if I recall correctly. Very high ceiling. It was like 100 feet high. It was a huge open room. And what people reported, which was really interesting, was they would walk by the Brook Room after it was closed, walk by the doors, and they hear the sounds of like a big band and a party playing. And so would some of the staff, and they would open the doors, and there's nobody in the room whatsoever. So they actually had apparently the interactive apparitions, and they also had this huge imprint of a hell of a party from the 1940s.
That's really cool. And I mean, cool place, like you said, with the thing running through. It's funny. Look, I feel like you're like the Rolling Stones or something, because Cindy's like, talk about the Moss Distillery. Moss Beach Distillery. Play the hits, Loyd. Play the single. So Moss Beach Distillery, that's a place you definitely had a huge hand in making that place famous. Lots of shows have filmed there, and there was a little controversial, right? So Ghost Hunters filmed there, and they have special effects. Let's do this. Come on, it's okay.
All right, well, let's talk about this for a second.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. So I first went to the place in '91 with a Japanese TV crew, and we actually had phenomena happening. The place had legitimate witnesses back to the 1930s. I talked to a couple of old-timers. I talked to the historian at the time. So we had some significant history of witness testimony from some very good witnesses over the years. And when we were there with this gazebo, we actually had a door open multiple times. Pretty much she finessed the ghost into opening the door for us on camera for Japanese television multiple times, which was kind of cool. And I had somebody outside to make sure it wasn't rigged. So the owner, actually, before we even got to go there, he was a new owner. John Barber, who's the current owner still, asked me on the phone if I thought this was a good thing or a bad thing for his business. Because is a ghost a good thing or a bad thing for the business, for a restaurant? And my question to him was, how's your food? And he said, stellar. So I said, then it's going to be good, because the ghost will bring people in, and whether they see the ghost or not, they'll come back for the food.
There you go.
In 1997, the state of California asked them to basically re-anchor the building because of earthquake issues. It had slid down the hill maybe a couple of inches. So they took it down to the bare bones, rebuilt it exactly as it was with a couple of minor differences, including where they placed the ladies' room. The construction workers, who I interviewed multiple times, had a significant number of activities that were going on. So that was interesting. And then John actually called me up and said, hey, John had been down to the Magic Castle down in Hollywood. I'd sent him down there. And he said, hey, can we get the ghost to do more stuff?
I wish.
I said, I don't know that I can put her on a time clock, on a schedule, no matter what we do. Yeah. So I said, we can do some things that they do at the castle and other places, but we have to do them as open-ended recreations. And we have to let people know that they're going on.
Sure.
So we built a few things based on what people had said, but I didn't have them built in the same spots or with the same activity, which was repeated. So lamps over the bar would swing, but not the lamps that had swung previously. We kept it away from the things that were actually genuine. So if somebody reported something, I knew which was which. And we had a computer record of everything. And we had a press conference. I wrote it up in Fate magazine. It was actually when the Ghost Hunter show aired, which was 2008. I was live blogging at that point and pissing a lot of people off.
I remember
they claimed not to know anything. However, a week and a half before they shot that at the distillery, I had spoken to a producer who was asking me about the Presidio Officers Club in San Francisco and also the distillery. And I said, well, make sure that you have the effects turned off. And the guy said, we know all about the effects. So for that was a piece of it. I also found out later that someone who was in the car picking them up at the airport for their California visit, because they didn't drive out there. That's a fake thing on TV. Discussed the special effects with them.
Right.
So the fact is that they knew about the effects. The only person willing to go on camera was a new chef who basically read from a sheet of information. He didn't know anything about the situation. He did not mention the effects. He didn't think to. He assumed they actually knew about them. And one of the effects they found on the TV show were actually the PA speakers for pumping music into the restaurant. So it was a hit shot basically on that.
Yeah. No, I know. And you took that one personally. I remember you're still a little tense about it. And,
I'm a little tense about it because, it just was one of those circumstances where they had discussed it at a conference that I had attended. They had actually talked about the place and even given me a shout out because I was in the audience. And it didn't seem like they were going to do anything other than talk about it when they did the show. And the show was directed at calling it a hoax. Yeah. And the restaurant ended up, I actually got a call from the restaurant right after the show aired because people were egging the place. There was graffiti on the place. People were calling and making fake reservations. They got horrible emails about it. So, the fans of the Ghost Hunter show were fanatics in that way.
Yeah, it's a shame. And it's always, hey, look, we know we've all been to places where you go and you're like, oh my gosh, this place is crazy. Like, and it's exciting. And because it doesn't usually happen to me. I've been to places all over the world and my expectation is that I'll just be in an interesting building, maybe at night, and that's that. So I know, like, lightning may strike while I'm there. It's happened, but it's not likely to happen.
Right. And this was all atmosphere. In fact, the bartender was told that if anybody asked about the lamps, he would say it's a special effect. That was what would happen.
Sure. But I also recognize just from my own work over the years too, when the restaurant asked you, like, is this good for business? The answer is pretty much always, even if the food's bad, Loyd, then you better really push that ghost because you need.
Yeah, that's right. If the food's bad, you've got to push the ghost story because nobody else, because the problem is that people won't come back if the food's not good.
That's right. But they'll come once. And that's the thing about, like you said, if people are interested, they'll go far out of their way to have dinner there. If they're not interested, they don't care. They're going to eat there or not eat there the same as anybody else. And so, but what alarms me is when I become part of someone's marketing plan, unwittingly, or they're like, hey, can you come endorse this? Or can you come call us officially haunted? And I'm like, I don't officially haunted says who, right? Like, I don't have a stamp. I don't have a,
for us, it was about, for me especially, it was about actually having access to a place where there was genuine phenomena, which we've seen over and over again over the years.
Yep.
And the exchange that I did was to help them, to bring the attention of TV and other things on there and to write articles about it. So that was the exchange for the access to that.
Yep. We all have our favorite places like that. And have you seen this too, where there's like the Lizzie, that's my Lizzie Borden house, right? I'm there quite often. I know the owner. She's great. If there's ever something I want to do, she's pretty amiable to it. It's interesting when you bring groups into a place like that and they start experiencing phenomena that has nothing in the world to do with the location, but very personal to them. My grandmother's here. Did she stay at the Lizzie Borden house? Oh, no, she's never even been in Massachusetts. Oh, well, but you're in this place having that experience right now. Mm-hmm. And I wonder too, like, what role do these places have in opening us up or abilities we've always had? It's just at a place like that, suddenly it's coming in.
The reality is that the environment does affect us psychically. Yeah. And we do know that geomagnetic fields have an impact on us to some extent. You can't be seeing or experiencing a ghost unless you're psychically open to some extent.
Right.
So when I talk about ESP and PK being involved in all cases, it is. You're using ESP to see the ghost, in essence, in that sense.
Okay.
And mediums will actually then say that it's possible that the guy's grandmother was there because he wanted to talk to his grandmother, and this was a setting in which he could talk to his grandmother, so she made an effort to get there.
Right.
That's what a medium might say.
And that's the thing too, right? So many people want to have a ghost experience.
Yeah.
Most don't want to have it at their home. They want to have it there and come home and talk about it, right? Leave it there.
Right.
And
yeah,
like,
well, yeah.
wow.
I mean, I get asked all the time about people, asking me, "Are you worried that they're going to follow you home?" And I've had the ghost from the distillery has appeared in multiple places to other people when where I am. She's appeared at conferences in the past.
You got to charge extra for that.
I should have, but I didn't know she was there. I had to be told that after the fact because I haven't been terribly sensitive to her.
Yeah. No, I get it. Okay, Tim wants to know. Tim's an investigator from the Michigan area. So what can he do? To be a better, increase his knowledge, elevate beyond the typical, join the Rhine Institute? What's the...
So join the Rhine Center, certainly. I will tell you that the Rhine Center has got a media library. We've had lectures that have been recorded over the last several years, and some really great lectures by a variety of people. I actually did a half-day advanced investigations piece that's actually up in the media center library. We do our online classes, and I do a field investigations class. I'm doing the paranormal tech class tonight. I actually recommend, for those people who do ghost hunting, the book that we're actually using for the paranormal technology class tonight is a book by a guy named Stephen T. Parsons.
Oh, yeah. I know Steve in the UK.
It's called Ghostology.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend that book for anybody interested in tech. And if you do EVP, you have to read a book called Paracoustics by Steve Parsons and Callum Cooper.
Yep, I know Cal too, yeah.
Yeah, so they really kind of hone in on that piece of it in a way that is truly scientific. So reading in that area is important. The other thing, again, is reading and understanding something about what we have learned about ESP and psychokinesis and evidence for survival in general. The more you know about the base, which is parapsychology work and psychical research, the better you'll be able to approach these cases and circumstances.
And also, I can't recommend enough that you follow Steve Parsons on Twitter. He's entertaining when he gets on a rant, man.
Yeah.
He gets fired up.
He does.
The angry Brit. He's come to Massachusetts a couple times for a conference, and I've hung out with him a few times, and he's lively. He's fun, smart, knows his stuff, and really passionate about it.
He's heavily involved with the SPR. I mean, he's one of their main investigator types, and I do recommend his stuff all the time.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy for sure. And that's, you're right. So TV shows sort of glorify the sport ghost hunter, which is, I get it. It's exciting. It's in the dark. And I know how the sausage is made. I've been around it a long time. Right. But at the same time, I like, so, okay, Loyd, here's a TV network and a big bag of money. How do you make a show about parapsychology that actually furthers the field too?
Well, it's really depending on what you're trying to do. The issue really, if you're doing something on ghosts or on ghost hunting, on that kind of field investigation piece, the key element, honestly, the drama comes from the ghost story.
Yeah.
And you can do it with the right witnesses telling their story very honestly. I mean, there have been shows where people have talked about that, but then you can do an investigation with the witnesses and with all the tools that are available. I don't want to give away the shop here because I have some things brewing right now, which I always do. Honestly, they never sell because they're not like the other ghost hunting shows.
Yeah.
And what we actually, parapsychology itself, there's some research that would be very visual. The remote viewing work that's been done.
Yeah.
Done live can be incredibly visual. It's been done on television multiple times, always successfully. We've been told relatively recently that a lot of times they don't want to do a show on remote viewing because what do you show? It's like, well, you show people being psychic and you go to the locations and there's no drama there apparently. No personality drama that you have on these ghost hunting shows, which is, as you know, is quite exacerbated by the production people.
Sure. Yeah. And also too, I get it. And that's because that's why people tune in. Tracy's very observant. I know you're not a big believer in demons, Loyd, but might I suggest you just turn your head around and look over your shoulder, because there's a devil on the wall right behind you.
That is a Japanese war mask. It's a little Japanese war mask I picked up in Japan.
Oh, all right. So
it's got horns on it. Has nothing to do with devils. So.
All right. So protect or evil, you're saying none of the above, just a decoration?
Think of it as a representation of an old samurai mask.
All right. Okay, this is good. Do you consider my lack of experience a bonus? I call myself a realist. I'm an investigator with a little experience who has a seasoned partner. I consider my lack of experience a bonus. Yeah, on the one hand, when you're an empty vessel, right? Like you're there to be filled. You just want to be filled with the right stuff.
You can be an experiencer. I mean, that's perfectly okay to go in as that, blank slate to be the experiencer. But you also need to have your seasoned investigator or partner question you about what you're experiencing.
Right.
And they need to, have interviewing skills. People ask me what the most important tool of an investigator is. It's actually interviewing skills, more important than anything else. And that includes listening, by the way, not just asking questions. Well,
that's the biggest part, right? Because one of the things I've learned over the years, and I started in this as a newspaper reporter, gathering these stories.
I remember. Yeah.
I always try to ask the same question 3 times over the span of a conversation. So you say like, oh, well, what did you see? I came home from work and there was the ghost. Oof, I'll never forget it. And you say, okay. And then you talk a little bit more and you're like, okay, so slow down a little bit. Let's talk through all the senses. What did you hear, smell, feel? Was the door unlocked? Oh, well, you know what? I dropped my keys, now that I think about it. And you start getting more details that you didn't get the first time. And then the third time, I call it cleanup, where you're asking again, like, did you really get every detail? And of course, you don't want to lead the witness, because you can do that. I
think when we're doing an investigation, we sit down with the folks to begin with. The first question is, what happened? Tell us what happened.
Yeah, right.
It's open-ended. And then taking them and separating them and walking through the house or the building to the places that they say they had an experience and asking those same questions again. Because when you move them, number one, away from a group, you might get slightly different answers. Mm-hmm. And then when you move to the spot where they had the experience, you often get more detail or slight changes to what's going on. So, and then you can bring them back together and ask the same questions again. So you have to, like you said, you have to really play this multiple times, multiple ways.
And not only that, it's interesting to me when 2 people are in the same place at the same time and have vastly different experiences, not calling either one a liar. I mean, I've been in buildings where someone says, I see an apparition right there. And I'm standing right next to him. And I go, I don't see it. I'm not calling you a liar, but I don't see it. And then to the point I even walked. I said, okay, tell me when I'm next to it. Right. You're there right now. And I'm looking around and I'm okay.
This is why people need to know about ESP. There's a really good reason why that person might have that experience and you don't. And there's a good reason why 10 people in the room, 2 people might see the apparition, 1 person might hear him talking, another person might smell the cologne or perfume, and somebody else just feels a presence and several people feel nothing. There's a reason for that. And that's where we're coming at from our field. That's how you approach it from the field, is understanding that. Right. There's a reason why we don't get photos easily. There's a reason why most of the technology can't detect it. I mean, there are reasons for this. And it's partly because the phenomena of what we call ghosts is essentially psychic. It's us picking up information, whether it's from a source, a conscious source like a ghost, or from the environment, looking at history. We're still picking up information. It's playing back in our perceptions, not in our senses.
Right. Yeah. No, that's really cool. And you've always been such a wealth of information. I know you got to go here soon because
I got to teach a class.
You got to teach a class, so you got to get off this and get on to some other software.
Right.
So I'm going to let you bounce out here. I'll stay with you folks just one more minute and say goodbye. But Loyd, thank you. It was great to catch up with you. It's been too long.
You too.
Yeah. And I'd like some more chocolate, please.
Well, we have to get together at some point. So
yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's been a while, but appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Please stay healthy and well.
Thanks. You too.
And take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right, Loyd. Loyd Auerbach, everybody, and appreciate him being here. Yeah, fun guy to hang out with, and also a mentalist. God, we didn't even get to talk to about that. There's so much more. He'll do tricks and stuff for you. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, I've been like, this has been tough for me. Let me just tell you guys before we ride off into the sunset. It's been tough to like watch the news and watch all the stuff that's been coming out and thinking about. To me, it feels like we're just really disconnected right now from each other, from ourselves, from where we should be. And I think you got to start asking yourselves, like, what kind of world do I want to live in? It's not this one, right? This isn't, I don't think too many people are okay with this. We got to do better at every step, all around, everybody, right? And so I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I feel like we got to work on those answers. Work on the answers in your own house, your own neighborhood, your own community, and see what we can do. Because, man, it's people shouldn't die over, a counterfeit bill, and people should feel safe where they live. Everybody should. Everyone deserves that. Okay, sorry, I don't want to get too far off on this, but I appreciate you guys very much. I really do. It's great to hang out with you guys a few times a week. Have some drinks. Tonight was hot cocoa, which was delicious. And, wherever you are and whatever you're drinking, whatever you're searching for, I hope you find it. I hope you find your own answers, because I know for me, the pursuit of the paranormal is about my own growth more than anything else, right? Like looking for those answers that make me feel whole, that make me feel like I'm learning about the world around me, my place in it, and where I'm going. And that's been the most powerful part of the experience for me. When I started in this over 20 years ago, my God, after a few years, I thought, I have all the answers. I know how this works. They fit into these boxes and so on. And the more I learned, the more I realized I don't know. And to the point now where I realize I'm a student. I'm a student, an empty vessel with so much to learn. And every story, every haunting, every experience gives me some new data that helps me fill in this very huge but hazy picture that's in front of us. And I hope that's what it's like for you guys too. I hope you guys are also learning something about yourself and connecting, connecting with each other. So thank you guys. Be safe, be well, be kind to each other. See what you can do to get out there and make the world a little bit of a better place. That's my hope. So thanks. Appreciate you guys. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook and all that. I'm happy to connect with you wherever I can. And you can always reach out. You can email me through my website. There's that. And check out my podcast. That's back, which has been really cool. It's been cool to see the podcast back. We're back to new episodes each week and get some cool things coming up. Also, if you guys want to see me live, I'm doing my ongoing story tour. You can see that on my website where I'll be. They're all virtual now. And the cool thing is wherever you are, you can register for free and you can attend via Zoom meeting. I'm doing different stories pretty much every night. And on the list of where I'll be is on my website. And if you want to tip your bartender, Venmo tips are accepted, of course. All right, guys, stay well, stay healthy. Love you all. And please be safe out there. And until next time, of course, take it easy.